You did the work. You know you did. You set the boundaries that used to terrify you. You stopped answering the calls that drained you. You learned to name what happened to you, and you stopped flinching when you said it out loud. You walked away from the people who only knew how to take. You stopped explaining yourself to those who were never going to understand. For years, healing was the quiet, central project of your life. And slowly, invisibly, you succeeded. So you waited for the reward, the peace they promised, the lightness, the version of you that finally feels whole, standing in the morning light, grateful and free. But that's not what came. What came instead was a silence you didn't expect. Not the loud pain of the old wounds. That's gone now mostly. This is something quieter, something that doesn't scream. You move through your days and everything is technically fine. You function. You show up. And still, somewhere underneath it all, there's a hollow space where the struggle used to live, a flatness, a strange, weightless nothing that follows you from room to room. You notice it in small moments. The evening goes quiet. The tasks are done, and instead of relief, you feel nothing in particular, a held breath with no reason to hold it. You wait for the old joy to rise, and it doesn't. You reach for the old ache, almost out of habit, and even that is gone. There's just a quiet, and you inside it. Here's the part no one warned you about. You can't tell anyone. Because how do you explain that you finally got better? And it feels like this. How do you say the healing worked, and yet you feel emptier than when you were breaking? It sounds ungrateful. It sounds like something is wrong with you. So you keep it to yourself, and you smile when people say how far you've come. And privately, you wonder why the far side of healing feels so much like an empty room. Nothing is wrong with you. Carl Jung understood something about this silence that most people never learn. That the emptiness which arrives after healing is not a failure of the healing. It is not a relapse. It is not you sliding backward into the dark. It is something else entirely. Something the world of quick fixes and bright affirmations has no language for, and so it leaves you alone with it. Tonight, we're going to sit with that emptiness, not to fix it, not to fill it, but to understand what it actually is and why it may be the most honest thing you felt in a very long time. Because the space you're standing in right now, this quiet, hollow room inside you, is not where the healing failed. It's where something old finally finished dying. Let's be clear about what this emptiness is not. It is not the emptiness of depression, though it can wear the same clothes. It is not the numbness of trauma, the kind that shuts you down to keep you safe. You've likely known those before, and this is different. Those emptinesses come from something being wrong. This one comes from something being finished. And the difference matters, because you cannot heal a thing that was never broken. You can only misunderstand it until it frightens you. Think about what your life used to be. For years, maybe for as long as you can remember, you were at war. There was always something to survive, someone to manage, a wound to tend, a fire to put out before it spread. Your nervous system learned to live in that weather. The tension became the background hum of who you were. You didn't notice it, the way you don't notice a sound that never stops. It was simply the climate of being you. And then, one day, you win. The war ends. The people are gone, or they no longer have power over you. The boundaries hold. The fires go out one by one until there are none left to fight. and you're left standing in a silence your whole body doesn't recognize. This is the thing almost no one says out loud. Struggle gives shape to a life. When you spend years fighting to heal, the fight itself becomes a kind of home. It gives you a role, the one who is working on themselves, the one who is getting better, the one with a mission and a wound and a reason. There is meaning in the climb, even when the climb is agony, especially when it's agony. Pain, at least, tells you where you are. So what happens when you reach the top and there is no next mountain? The purpose that carried you was made of pain. And when the pain finally lifts, the purpose lifts with it. You're not sad. You're not broken. You're just standing there, holding nothing, in a life that no longer requires the person you had to become in order to survive it. And that person, that self you built, had a job. For years, it was the most important job in the world. Stay alert, stay strong, read the room, anticipate the danger, stay one step ahead of the next wound before it lands. Now the job is done. And no one told that part of you that it could finally stop. So it keeps standing at its post, in an empty field, scanning a horizon where nothing is coming. Loyal, exhausted, waiting for a war that isn't going to return. And the strange, hollow feeling you can't name, the one that follows you through the quiet evenings, that's the feeling of a soldier who hasn't yet been told the war is over. Jung had a word for the self you build in order to survive. He called it the persona. The persona is the face you wear for the world. It's not a lie, exactly. It's a necessary adaptation. A child who learns that love must be earned builds a persona that performs, that achieves, that never quite rests. A child who learns that safety means being small builds a persona that disappears, that takes up no space, that apologizes for existing. A person who survives betrayal builds a persona that watches every exit, that trusts no one too quickly, that keeps one hand on the door at all times. These masks are not weakness. They are intelligence. They kept you alive in a world that wasn't safe for the real you. For a very long time, the persona and survival were the same thing. And you cannot hate a thing that once saved your life, even after you no longer need it. But here is what Jung understood, and what almost no one will tell you. When you heal, you don't just remove the wounds. You remove the reason the persona existed in the first place. And so, quietly, it begins to die. This is what actually left. Not your joy, not your capacity to feel. What left was the version of you that was organized entirely around a threat that no longer exists. The vigilant one, the performer, the fixer, the one who kept everyone else calm so the room would stay safe. When the threat dissolved, that whole architecture lost its purpose. And a structure built for a purpose cannot keep standing once the purpose is gone. The emptiness you feel is the space that structure used to occupy. Let me give you an image for it. Imagine a house built around a single load-bearing wall, and that wall is made of fear. Every room arranged to protect it, every hallway bending around it. You lived in that house so long, you forgot it could be any other way. And then, one day, you heal. And the fear is simply gone. The wall comes down, and you walk through the house, and it is so much more open than before, so much lighter, flooded with a space you never knew was possible, and also unbearably unfamiliar. The rooms don't know their shape anymore. The light falls in places it never used to reach. You stand in the middle of all that openness, and you don't know where to put yourself, because every instinct you have was built around a wall that isn't there. That's where you are now. standing in the open space where a wall used to be, free and lost at exactly the same time. The old self isn't screaming as it goes. That's what makes it so disorienting. There is no funeral, no single moment of grief you can point to and say, there, that's where I lost it. It just gets quieter and quieter until one day you reach for the person you used to be and find only the echo of them. And you realize you can't quite remember what it felt like to be someone who needed all that armor just to walk through a day. Something is dying in you, slowly, gently, without your permission and without your help. And the ache you feel is not the ache of being broken. It's the ache of being between selves. There's a particular loneliness to this stage, and it deserves to be named plainly because you have probably been carrying it without a name. It's the loneliness of looking at your own life like a room someone just moved out of. The furniture is still there. The routines still run on time. You still make the coffee, still answer the messages, still do the work and say the right things. From the outside, nothing has changed at all. But you move through it like a visitor in a house you used to live in. Present and strangely far away, watching your own life from a step behind your own eyes. You reach for the old feelings and they don't come. The things that used to light you up feel muted now, like music heard through a wall in another room. And the things that used to hurt, they don't cut the same way either. Everything has been turned down. The volume of your whole inner life lowered to a low and even hum so that nothing is sharp and nothing is bright and nothing quite reaches you. People will tell you this is numbness. They'll tell you that you need to feel more, do more, chase something that sparks, book the trip, start the project, fall in love, anything to turn the volume back up. But that advice misunderstands what is happening to you. You are not failing to feel. You are standing in the pause between two lives, and the pause has its own quality. Not empty like a void that swallows things. Empty like a room that has been cleared out, swept clean, and not yet furnished. Empty the way a page is empty. Waiting, not lacking. Jung would say you are in the space between the death of the old and the birth of the new. A threshold, a place with no name and no map. And that space is not comfortable because it offers you no identity to hold onto. The old self is gone. The new self has not yet arrived. And you are asked to exist for a while as no one in particular, to be a person without a story about who they are. This is the part the bright, motivational version of healing never mentions. It sells you the before and the after, the wound and then the triumph, the breakdown and then the breakthrough, tied up, neat. It never shows you this middle place, this long gray corridor where you are neither the person you were nor the person you're becoming, where nothing is wrong and nothing is thrilling, and you simply have to live day after day in the hollow of the in-between. And maybe you've been treating this corridor as a problem to solve, filling it with noise, new goals, new distractions, new intensities, anything to feel the old aliveness again. Because intensity, even painful intensity, at least felt like proof that you existed. The hollow doesn't argue with you. It doesn't reassure you either. It just waits. But what if the emptiness isn't asking to be filled? What if it's asking to be felt, slowly, honestly, without being rushed toward some ending that makes it mean something? What if the room is empty because it is finally yours? Here is the turn, and I want to offer it carefully because it is not the turn you've been sold 100 times before. I am not going to tell you the emptiness is secretly a doorway to your best life. I'm not going to promise that if you just sit with it long enough, it blossoms into bliss and everything makes sense. That would be the same bright lie, only whispered in a gentler voice. And you have had enough of bright lies. You came here for something truer. So here is what I'll tell you instead. It's smaller, and it will hold. The emptiness is honest. For most of your life, the space inside you was full, but full of things you never chose. Full of vigilance, full of other people's moods and needs and emergencies. Full of the constant, exhausting labor of managing a self that was built to survive. It felt like fullness, but it was really occupation. Someone else's war, living rent-free in your body for years. And now it's empty. And for the first time, maybe in your entire life, the space inside you is not being used to hold a threat. That is what the hollow actually is. It is not the absence of something good. It is the absence of something that was never yours to carry. The silent isn't a sign that you've lost your way. It is the sound of a mind that is no longer at war with itself. And you have simply never heard that sound before. So it reaches you as loss. You are grieving the noise because the noise was all you knew. Jung believed the goal of a human life was not happiness. It was wholeness. And wholeness, he understood, includes the empty spaces. It includes the parts of you that are quiet, unformed, still waiting to be born. A whole person is not someone who is full all the time, lit up and certain and complete. A whole person is someone who can stand inside their own emptiness without needing to run from it. Who can be with themselves when there is no crisis to organize around, no role to perform, no one to rescue, nothing to prove. So this stage, this flat, hollow, grieving stage you're moving through, is not a detour away from wholeness. It is wholeness in its most uncomfortable and least photogenic form. It is you learning to exist as yourself when the war is over and the armor is on the floor and there is no one left to be except whoever you actually are underneath all of it. You don't have to love the emptiness. You don't have to be grateful for it. You don't have to twist it into a lesson or a blessing or a sign. You only have to stop treating it as proof that something has gone wrong. Because nothing has gone wrong. You healed. In this quiet, this space, this hollow that frightens you, this is simply what the other side of healing feels like. Before anyone decorates it for the camera, it feels like an empty room. And an empty room is not a tragedy. It's a beginning that hasn't spoken yet. So what do you do with this? Nothing. For now. Nothing. That's the answer no one wants. And the only one that's true. You don't fix the hollow. You don't rush to fill it with a new identity, a new mission, a new war to make yourself feel purposeful again. You've done that your whole life. Reached for the next thing to be, the next role to hold, the next fire to run toward. This is the first time you're being asked to simply stay, to let the empty room stay empty a little longer, and to trust that whatever fills it when something finally does will be chosen this time, not forced into being by fear. The old self is still leaving. Let it leave. Don't chase it to the door. Don't beg it to stay just because it's familiar, just because you don't know who you are without it. It kept you alive. Its work is done. And the kindest, most honest thing you can do is let it go quietly, with something close to gratitude, the way you'd watch an old house disappear in the mirror as you finally drive away. And yet, if you sit in that stillness long enough, really sit in it, you may start to notice something the emptiness was hiding. Underneath the quiet, there's a low pressure, a faint tension, like the air before weather, because the self that is leaving does not always leave gently to the very end. Sometimes, in the deepest part of the stillness, something underneath begins to move. A hairline crack you can't yet see, running through the floor of who you thought you were. You've been standing in the still point, the lowest, quietest place in the whole journey. But stillness is not the end of the story. It's the pause before the ground shifts, because there's a difference between the old self fading and the old self breaking. And what comes next is not more silence. What comes next is the moment, the mask. The one you've worn so long you forgot it was a mask, finally cracks all the way through. That's where this journey goes next. For tonight, though, let this be enough. If you're standing in that hollow space, wondering why the healing didn't feel the way you thought it would, carry this with you. The emptiness is not the end of your story. It's the silence between who you were and who you haven't met yet. And you don't have to fill it tonight. You only have to stay. If this gave words to something you've been feeling but couldn't name, subscribe and stay with this channel. This is part of a longer journey through what it means to lose a self and slowly become whole. The next chapter goes into what happens when the old self doesn't just fade quietly, but breaks open completely. If you don't want to miss where this goes, that quiet decision to follow along is enough. Stay in the silence a little longer. There's more here than it seems. Good night.